Today we're going to be talking about our research paper, our researched argument paper, the big paper for the class. And I want you to make sure that you've already printed out the whole thing. I am going to talk a little bit about the holistic grading thing at the end, so bear with me here. Your topic has to be the same issue that you've been doing since we did the topic proposal. Um, you may have shifted your focus a little bit, but that's okay. Maybe you're arguing the other side now because you see the error of your ways. That's okay too. Um, Make sure when you start thinking about how you're going to put this paper together, um, what information needs to be up front first so that your reader can follow along with your argument. And what did you learn that made you take the particular aspect that you are? Make sure we know that too. Okay. Don't assume that we have done the same research. It's really easy to do. You've been working this for a while, and it seems like everybody knows this stuff, but we don't. So make sure that you're giving us enough background information so we can follow along. Um, Also, what's your main points? You want to make sure that you've put them in the right order. Whatever that order is, you should know why point one comes and then point two and point three. Even if it's just chronological or importance or um, I can make it go from one to the other this way, that works. Okay. Um, Now, you're going to have to determine what kind of argument you're actually writing. That's helpful. Most people just kind of bulldoze through an idea and move on. But you have to think about what do you want your audience to do with the information at the end? Okay. If you want them to just know more about this, know that it is an issue. Okay. That's an argument of fact. If you want them to do something about it, that's a proposal. Hey, I think you should do this about X because. Okay. Sometimes you're arguing a causal, you're arguing all kinds of possibilities there, definitions and all that. Sometimes you have to argue for a definition so that you can show us it's important. You have to do a couple things. The handout, the assignment sheet, walks you through 3 different kind of standard researched arguments if you're trying to do this. Okay, so if you're trying to explain, if you're trying to get somebody to do something, give money, give time, give energy, um, whatever, make a change. It's a proposal. Okay, that's your main structure. Now you may have to do a couple of other things in there, like this definition is correct and this one is incorrect. So you have to make little bitty arguments in there as maybe your main points. But your main thing is you're trying to get somebody to do something. And so you have to set it up as okay, you should do X because hopefully it benefits you in some way and it benefits others. Okay. Um, Maybe you want somebody to do something, but you're not quite sure what that should be. Okay. A claim of fact basically puts the information out there in front of people so that they know it's an issue. Some things we think are very straightforward. Okay, we know human trafficking is wrong. It's an issue. Okay, it's an issue. Really, um, I don't know anybody in that particular predicament, and maybe you don't, but maybe you do. Here's why it's an issue. There are lots of things that happen to people because they get roped into things that they didn't understand. Okay, I'm not going to go down that road too far. Um, but there's an idea here that people need to understand the importance. It's a claim of fact. They need to understand something is an issue. Claim of fact. Okay. And again, there's some pieces here that that will help you out, help you figure out. A claim of value. This is an evaluation. Okay, so I think that Sense and Sensibility is the best book ever written. Well, why do I make that claim? Okay, now that's not a topic you can choose right now, but that's the idea. You want to say, okay, this is the best solution. Okay. Um, or perhaps you want to see a change, but you want to see this change because it's a matter of family values or importance to the neighborhood or, okay, whatever. Um, and, there's also a claim of definition. You can have some different things. Um, Make sure that you're reading this criteria very carefully at the bottom of page 2, okay? You need a 7-page paper minimum, okay? If it's 6 or 5, it doesn't get graded, okay? You have to have at least 7 pages. Now, I don't care how much you write at the other end of that. You need 12 pages to do this, no big deal, okay? You need 15 pages to do this, have a party. I will read it and grade all of it, okay? But it has to be at least 7 pages, okay? Doesn't include your title page, your abstract page, or your references page. Okay, so you really should at the end have 10 pages, maybe 11 if you're counting everybody. Okay, you have to have a clear thesis, a clear claim. What's your research question? What do you know about it? How did you fix it? Okay, what did you figure out? And then you need at least 5 sources that you've actually cited in your paper. Remember, you had 10 or so. 3 of those have to be scholarly, peer-reviewed sources. Non-scholarly sources should be credible. Hang on to your sources. You will need to turn them in with the second draft. Okay. Actually, anything you use outside of the book, you'll have to turn them in, as electronically. Make sure that you're using a variety of sources. That's why we did the annotated bibliography that way. Okay. Present your argument in a structure that allows your reader to follow along. Make sure that you also include any relevant counter arguments, things that reasonable people could disagree with you about, okay, about your topic. And make sure that you deal with it either in okay, that really doesn't apply to what I'm doing. I would say, yes, they're correct. And then still, this is an issue. That kind of thing. Pages 47 and 48 in your textbook will be helpful. I want to say that's in chapter 2, but you'll have to have a look there. I know our page numbers are weird with the ebook. Make sure that not only do you walk it through the process that we're doing with rough drafts and peer reviews and such, but that you're also, being careful to edit your own work. My advice is always print it out, read it out loud, make the marks on the page, and then go back in and fix it. Okay. Make sure that you're following APA style as closely as you possibly can. And at this point in the semester, it should be pretty dang close. Okay. Make sure that you go through the rough draft. We're going to do the research paper forum, which means you post as your post is your draft. And then your reply is your peer review. Please use the peer review questions. Don't just tell them, yay, you rock, because that's not enough to get you any points and it's not really helpful to them. A couple other things that you need to know. One is this is 20% of your course grade. So, do your best work. The other thing is if you use any articles outside of the book on your references page, you need to make sure that when we do the second rough draft, the one that I'm going to look at and walk through, that you post those there. Okay. What's the other thing? Oh, if one or more of those articles is missing, your research paper can lose up to a letter grade. You have to follow the directions, folks. If you do something outside of the book, make sure that you save the PDF, you save the link, or that you just save the article on your computer or your device, whatever, and make sure that you upload it when you upload your second rough draft. Makes sense. Okay. Again, if you have questions, you know to email me. Now, last thing, and I told you at the beginning of this video that I was going to do this towards the end, so here we are, 10 minutes in. This holistic rubric for grading, okay, it's one of my favorite explanations of how do we grade papers, okay. Now, I can, and I do sometimes, set up a rubric that is all points-based. If you do X, you get this many points. If you do Y, you do get this many points. Okay. This is more closely what goes through my head and most English teachers' heads. Sorry, I just yanked my finger off. Well, not my finger, my nail. Anyway, the ideas of A work versus B work versus C work, why your particular paper might not have passed. An A work does more than just tap the requirements to the paper. The requirements for any assignment really, but it doesn't have to be perfect, but it does have to be very good. It's excellent. It meets the requirements very well. It's a mature paper. It's got the structure correct. The transitions between the pieces of the paper work really well. I don't have to back up and try again to figure out what in the world are you saying. I can read it out loud very easily. It's American Standard English, and I would add edited English. We all have things that we say, how we talk, and that's great. And most of the time, we're pretty understandable. But in writing, we have to be more careful. And in something like this, where you've had time to do a draft, and you've been working on this, you need to make sure that you read it out loud. And I know students think that that's so silly. Why would I want to read it out loud? Well, your brain makes certain connections when you read in your head that it can't usually make when you're reading out loud. Okay. A lot of times, especially when we've been working with something for a while, we can only our brain fills in the blanks for us. Okay. And you don't want to do that in your paper because you're not the only one reading it. And so if you read it out loud, it tends to show you places where you might need to break that word string into two parts to make it real sentences. Or maybe those two sentences aren't really sentences and they need to be smushed together. Or maybe that piece of information belongs further down or higher up in the paper, depending. Reading your work out loud really does help you get rid of a lot of those real easy, annoying errors. Now, if you're working on something super long, 7 pages is not super long, but if you're working on something that has multiple authors or has other drafts that you've done, or it's part of a bigger project or whatever, sometimes it's best to read backwards, is what I call it. Go to the end of the paper, read the last sentence. Each sentence, then previous, go back. What that does is it's another layer of making your brain make sense of things one sentence at a time. And it can show you places where you've really jumped a gap for your reader, and which worked fine for you, but won't work fine for them. I'm not expecting you to do that for this paper, but if you know that you're tend to be a little scattered, read it backwards. It helps too. Okay. The difference between A work and B work, B work is just a little bit less than. It's still good. Okay, a B is good, but it's not as smooth or as detailed or as in depth, perhaps, as an A work is. Okay, B work is still pretty good. C work, it's average. Okay, or maybe slightly below average. And C work is not what you want to push for. You want to push for A work. Sometimes that means you're going to end up in the C lane, but that's okay. C work makes some mistakes or gets some things out of order or has some problems with making it edited English and that kind of thing. And then D work does not meet the expectations for completion. Okay, this is not competent college level work. So anything between 60 and 69, um, you should really ask about writing again, okay, regardless of which class you're in. The other part of a D paper is you may have good ideas, but your execution is really lacking, has lots of errors and things that you shouldn't be making at this point. And then there's the F paper. Look at that list, because while sometimes an F paper is an honest effort, um, usually it's not. It's late, or it's really short, or it's plagiarized. Actually, you get a 0 for that. You don't even get an F for that. You don't follow the assignment. You don't fulfill all the assignment pieces. It lacks, it lacks really attention to detail at all. I will tell you, most of the time, um, if you make a good effort and you've been kind of traveling along with us and doing what you're needed to do as far as the proposal and the drafts and that kind of stuff, when you get to the final draft for the research paper, you should be solidly in the B area, if not A. Now, doesn't always happen. I know everybody has their days or weeks or classes, and I know some of you would enjoy being in English class about as much as I enjoyed being in algebra class, so I'll give you that. But we have work to do. And this is going to be helpful for you in your job. This is going to be helpful for you in your life. If nothing else, it's going to teach you a little bit about how you write and how you think and what you do. So, and that's not less than either. So if you have questions about holistic grading or about grading in general, always ask. Um, and if you have questions specifically about your own paper, what you need to do, how you need to do things, you want to send me a preliminary draft. Say the rough draft 2 that I looked at didn't go very well. I'm always more than happy to look at a intermediary draft before you have to turn it in for a grade. So spend your time wisely. Remember that list of what you were going to do earlier, what we did in the proposal. See how well you're doing with that, and let me know if you have questions. Okay.